everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Riders and Fighters, a podcast, and I'm your host, AJ Ortega. This is episode 9. Episode 9. Today, I have a writer on the show, a comedy writer. Jared Walls is a stand-up comic living in Austin, Texas. And in this interview, we talk about writing, of course. We talk about his time working as a prison guard. We talk about what does it feel like bombing on stage or dealing with hecklers or doing quite well and having some triumphs and successes in stand-up comedy. So stick around for that interview. It's a fun one, and I was glad that Jared was able to carve out some time and talk to me. That was recorded a week or two ago before the crazy weather in central Texas and in lots of places in the U.S. But Jared is okay. We don't address it here because it was recorded before. But rest assured, he had some trouble, but is all good now. He made it through, and lots of people did. I went through Hurricane Harvey myself a few years ago when I was living in South Texas, and so I know how that big natural disaster stuff can, derail like an entire city, and how frustrating it is and how weirdly helpless you feel in the 21st century. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. Again, it's everywhere, and you guys have been checking on your people and all that stuff, and so we'll move along, but Jared was okay. I watched a lot of fights yesterday. The UFC had a fight night event. Top Rank Boxing had a card that had 2 Mexicans in the main event, and I was quite interested in that. And Showtime Boxing had a couple of heavyweights and Adrian Broner in the main event, his comeback after a 2-year layoff. And so in the UFC main event, we had Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis. And there were several other good fights, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip those and just go straight to the main event. The main event, these are heavyweights, so it had like 500 pounds of fighter in there. Because these guys are big even for heavyweights. They're at the top part of the limit. Derek Lewis is one of my favorite UFC fighters. He's a Houston guy these days, originally from New Orleans, but a Houston guy these days. And, speaking of natural disasters and Hurricane Harvey, a few years ago when that went down, he's living in Houston, and he rescued over 100 people during Hurricane Harvey in his lifted pickup truck. Like he has a big, lifted, I don't know what kind of truck it was, but big, huge tires, giant suspension lift, all that kind of stuff. And so he wasn't as affected by high waters as other people. So he was going around his neighborhood and whatnot and grabbing people. And again, one of those things that was done kind of quietly until somebody recognized him and, blew up a little bit. But look that up. It's a cool story. Anyhow, so he's in the main event, and I'm a big fan. And on top of him, doing something cool like a gesture like that with his pickup truck and saving people, he's one of the heaviest hitters in the division. And so in this match, he's avoiding Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes, he didn't want to get tied up with a wrestler. Blaydes is quite a talented wrestler. Derek Lewis was staying quite on the outside. There's a few exchanges that showed how much power these guys have. Again, there's lots of lulls in the first round, but when they clashed, it was, Godzilla King Kong style. It was very explosive, and you're like, oh, if somebody lands one of these, we're in for a short fight. But a minute or two into the second round, about a minute and a half, Derek Lewis catches Curtis Blaydes coming in to shoot on him, going for a takedown, like a double leg, a wrestling takedown. But Derek Lewis lands a solid uppercut as Blaydes is coming in. And so Blaydes is out before he even hits the ground and falls stiff on the canvas and gets 2 more hits while he's unconscious as referee Herb Dean got in there. I didn't really look at it again. I'm not sure if he was out of position. It was one of those things that you don't stop till the referee says so. I know Derek Lewis got some criticism for those 2 follow-up shots when the guy was unconscious, but them's the rules, and adrenaline does weird shit to you. so I can't be too critical. I was worried about Curtis Blades because he took a while to come around. But he did eventually regain consciousness and walk out of the octagon. And so that was the main event. It was pretty, explosive, impressive knockout with two giant heavyweights. So that was, that's how you want those heavyweight matches to go down. And so it was quite decisive there. And then at that time, I switched over to the Mexican boxing war over on ESPN. And that was between Oscar Valdez and Miguel Berchelt for the WBC junior lightweight title. Valdez was undefeated going into this. But despite being undefeated, he was an underdog and had significantly less experience than Miguel Berchelt. Miguel Berchelt had, I think, a loss or two on his record, but like 34 out of 38 wins were by knockout. And so he's a formidable champion. And with these kinds of fights, like every fight is promoted like it's going to be a great fight and you can't miss it. That's part of how you market and sell things. But in truth, very few fights are exceptional, memorable, exciting, and all that. But this fight's promotion had a lot to do with the fact that the winners were both Mexican. And if you're not aware, Mexico has produced the most world champions in boxing by a mile. And that's part of the boxing culture, that we're aware that Mexicans are always formidable opponents. They are warriors in the ring and all these kinds of descriptors we can attach to them. In short, Mexicans excel in boxing. A lot of it has to do with certain training centers and things like this, and national pride and ethnic pride goes into it as well. But they're at the top for a reason. So you get two of them in there, you're going to see fireworks. I heard the Barrera versus Morales trilogy being brought up as a comparison, and we haven't even seen these two kids fight. And so they're referencing, a trilogy of a couple Mexican boxers going to war 3 times, and some of the best fights you'll ever see. And so those kinds of analogies were being made leading up to this fight. Berchelt, an impressive Mexican champion, he even got the blessing of the president of Mexico. On top of that, like the best Mexican boxer ever, Julio Cesar Chavez, he picked Berchelt to win as well. And so Valdez is a clear underdog. So in the first round, I'm worried because Berchelt is calm, like a champion should be. Very measured, very technical. Valdez, on the other hand, was a little tense, twitchy, trying to get big hooks landed rather than working on the jab. I didn't like that nervous energy, that he was too wound up and maybe showing his lack of experience or maturity or the jitters or whatever you want to call it. It's been about a year since he'd been in a ring as well. He had like a year-long camp during COVID, basically. But I didn't like that nervous energy because that's when you're too wound up and you start to make mistakes. And so Valdez showed that left hook a lot. And he's just going for his head. He's just going for Berchelt's head. In round 4, though, Valdez is landing everything. Like, he's landing everything. Lefts and rights and all to the head. And Berchelt is out on his feet. Wobbly legs, unsteady. And you're like, at any point, his legs ain't going to hold him up. Like, he's wobbly like he's drunk, like in a cartoon. It looked like that. He's, out on his feet. Nobody would have blamed the ref if he stopped it there. But again, it's a championship fight. They're Mexican warriors. And so they let them go. Maybe they let him go a little bit longer than, a fight that isn't this high profile or something, right? I don't know. But Valdez actually scores a technical knockdown there in that 4th round because Berchelt fell into the ropes, which kept him up. So he didn't hit the ground per se, but if the ropes weren't there, he would have. And so that's a technical knockdown. And so he got a standing 8 count for that, which would make that a 10-8 round by the rules. Somehow he survives, just barely. He gets out of that 4th round, and the referee needs to see something in the next round to keep it going. I don't know if it was in that round or the next one, but the referee tells his corner, like, I got to see something, or, he has the authority to stop it, basically, which is considerate, and I think everybody knew that. Burchelt, I think even in his punchy kind of state, knew that. He knows he's losing. His corner is watching it go down. Everybody knows, but the ref has to say it. I think that was responsible. And so a couple more rounds go by, and Burchelt is recovering somehow, but he's like on autopilot. You can see he's just on autopilot, but he's like a real boxer because his body is just doing what a boxer does. All instinct, muscle memory, those kinds of things. Who knows how much or how little he's going to actually remember, but he's like on autopilot and sticking with the technical stuff, jab and things like this. And I think he kind of won. Well, I think he won 6 and 7. I also think he won round 1, but I think he won round 6 and 7. I think Andre Ward's card on the broadcast agreed with that as well. I'd have to see the CompuBox numbers and see how accurate I am and see if that's an illusion or not. So he's quite behind, but I think 1 or 2 or 3 rounds. And so at this point, we're deep into the 10th round of 12. We're deep into the 10th. And Burchelt has no power behind his punches. The punches look like they're at 50%, and they're a little bit slow. You can read them. I mean, they're good kind of technical punches, but it's just like this is a championship match, and it's too slow and not powerful enough. And he's somehow pretty, technically sound despite all that damage, but he can't get out of the way. Like, as far as his offense, I think it was still interesting to see, but the defense, he couldn't get out of the way of the punches. The head movement and slipping punches is just that fraction of a second delay he has from being knocked down a few times certainly took its effect. And so he takes lots of jabs and hooks, and in the last second of the round 10, he's knocked out by a devastating left hook. The same left hook that was there since round 1. Yeah, Valdez impressed a lot of people. But he's coached by Saul Canelo Alvarez's coach. Canelo Alvarez, one of the most decorated Mexican fighters ever, and the current best Mexican fighter, and one of the best pound-for-pound fighters alive right now. And so that's the same training Valdez is receiving. So he's going places, is what I'm trying to say. My only complaint in that performance was that, again, the kind of nervous energy in the beginning, and that he was too busy headhunting Burchelt when he saw him hurt. Even after that round 4, if he had worked the body a bit more, I think he could have closed the show sooner. And that's one of those things that I found interesting, and that's actually the Mexican style, is to, you work the body, then the head will fall, right? That's one of those kinds of things. And I didn't really see a lot of that, which I thought was unique. And I was like, did they train him for that? Or was he not listening to his corner? I don't know. Or was he just like, I want that explosive headshot knockout to get on my highlight reel? Who knows? But I wish he would have worked the body a little bit more, and he could have showcased a little bit more of his skills. In any case, it was KO of the year, but the year is young. Then I switched over to Showtime and caught a bit of the Otto Wallin and Dominic Breazeale fight, and it wasn't super interesting to me. I know Wallin, Swedish guy, I believe, fought Tyson Fury before, and that was that the guy that cut him open real bad? I believe it is. Heavyweights, it wasn't getting my interest. But Wallin won decisively. Then there was the comeback of Adrian Broner versus Giovanni Santiago. And Adrian Broner, you probably remember him from losing to Manny Pacquiao a few years ago. And then he stepped away from boxing, started rapping and drugs and alcohol and stuff like this apparently, and really blew up, like really got really big and had to lose like a ton of weight. And so there was a big question mark about how does he look when he comes back and how does he perform. He's been gone for 2 years or whatever it was, and he didn't look the same. His body looked in good shape, which was impressive for being out for 2 years and seeing the photos of him when he had kind of blown up. But he was just slow. It wasn't the same explosive kind of. I didn't see the old Broner in there. And so he won the match. It was a unanimous decision. It went to 12 rounds. He won the match, but most people thought it was a bit closer. Like people are saying he barely eked by. Might have had to do. There was a foul at one point. Santiago hit Broner after the bell. Well, Broner hit Santiago after the bell, and Santiago retaliated, which was quite after the bell, right? And so the referee, I believe, took a point after one of those rounds. So he barely got through that one. Nothing super impressive. I'm happy for him. I think I don't like him. His personality is too brash. I don't know how much it's a show, but I can respect the work he put in and to compete at that level, even if it's not super exciting or whatever, and he barely gets by. There's something to be said about his willingness to get back in the ring that way, and again, maybe not set fireworks off like the Valdez fight, but hey, I'm still here. You know, my fear is that they're gonna feed him to some up and comer that he can't win against to give somebody a notable win, like a past his prime Adrian Broner. I don't know if that's good for boxing. So that's just one of the concerns I have. Not much to say about the Showtime card, because at that point I was fatigued from watching fights. I was a little bit gassed out. Like even I have my limits in terms of how much fight stuff I can take in. So that was the recap of all those events. Usually don't talk too much about them, but it was a stacked Saturday. But look up the Valdez and Burchelt fight. That was a really interesting one, and one-sided and everything, but certainly got to showcase an up-and-coming Mexican prospect at junior lightweight. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to that introduction and fight recap from the weekend. What I got coming up next is the interview portion. I have my interview with stand-up comic Jared Walls. Hope you enjoy. All right. I'm sitting here now with Jared Walls, comic out of Austin, Texas. Jared, tell me a little bit, who are you and why comedy? Why stand-up comedy?
Who am I?
Get existential real quick, bitch.
Right. No, it's it's too early for that. No.
We're recording this at 7 a.m.
Right. No, we're
No, it's
actually
5
not.
o'clock in the evening. No.
It's like, so we know each other from grad school, and grad school is a monster. Like you don't really have time to do anything. But even before then, I was always interested in comedy. Anyway, so sorry. In grad school, like a lot of my like subject, a lot of conference papers that I presented and stuff were about humor or comedy and either poetry or like different elements of fiction. But I was always interested in stand up. Like in college, I really like got into nobody super surprising like Bill Hicks, that kind of stuff. But I got really interested in just kind of listening to stand up. Didn't really occur to me how to that you could just do it. That the point of entry was actually it's pretty low. But there wasn't like a comedy open mic or anything. Where I was going to school. So once we finished grad school, jumping back around again. I don't know about you, but I had like this kind of anxious energy. Like I didn't know what to do with myself because I'd spent, the better part of 3 years just like writing every day. I was kind of burned out on that, right? Because for people who are listening, we both have an MFA in creative writing. And so part of that is you write a manuscript. And so you spend all of your time in school, but at that point in time, I was done. Like I was over poetry. I was over writing poems.
You were tapped out from that creative space or energy or whatever.
Yeah. And then, I had gotten a desk job. And so and I wasn't sure if I was going to be coming back to teach or not. So I needed to do something with myself. And I just started, I don't even remember how I just started to figure out that there were open mics. And I took I took forever, like trying to come up with the at an open mic they give you 3 minutes, which is it's like no time.
It's a boxing round.
But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's just, but it's daunting for sure. So I spent forever trying to come up with my set, and then at that point in time, like I don't know why I did this, but I went on my first open mic was at the Velveeta Room here in Austin, which is on 6th Street. It's at the corner of like doing shots off of women's breasts on the corner of like getting stabbed in the stomach. Like that's where it is
the
on
Coyote
6th Street.
Ugly
Yeah.
and the hip hop place. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know exactly the two places you're talking about because I like both of them. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So that's like where it is. And at the time, the management wasn't very good. It was an awful experience. I went on like super late. Also, you have to like keep, if the guy didn't know you, he wouldn't put you up. So you'd have to go in like weeks before and introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm going to try and sign up. And then even then you go on at 1 a.m.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like when I was younger, I was in theater too, but like when theater didn't have any stakes. You know what I mean? Like in middle school, it was a blast. And so I was in 8th grade, I got into this class. It was basically improv now that I think about it. But you had to audition for the class. And so we would go to like the county fair and do like stuff. So it was just like dicking around.
Sure.
Exploring
though.
Yeah. Yeah. You get into high school and you realize theater is a lot of work and you got to hang out with theater kids. But anyway.
But that's interesting. I was
always into, yeah.
I think it's interesting that you said it when you started, again, because we had this, you had this background where, okay, well, I got my master's in, creative writing. It's a field of literature, really, right? It's like we're studying a lot of that in terms of, your classes and stuff. And so you were writing about humor in literature. And before that, you said that what were those kind of like comedic kind of, so there's humor in literature and then there's comedy albums and so on. Yeah. But I guess I'm asking like, what's, bridging that gap, or how apparent was it, or is it even something you're conscious of?
I think I was trying to tap in because I never really got too deep into criticism in terms of like, especially in MFA. So I think that was a through line that I had discovered that like, people, there isn't a whole lot, but there is criticism about humor or comedy in literature. And so I think that was a vein that I sort of took to, because it also helped me discover people who were funny, that wrote like either funny or offbeat kind of poetry.
Word.
So like Tony Hoagland and Dean Young are probably the two that are quote unquote contemporary that I was writing about and reading.
Okay. And so, and you mentioned that you listened to, you said, yeah, well, kind of maybe, semi-predictable stuff like Bill Hicks. And yeah, of course, like, I mean, it's one of those things like you can't be that plugged into contemporary comedy without hitting him in some regard. But who else, or maybe like not influences, but inspirations? I think there's a distinction there, right? Like, oh, well, this person influenced me, but it's not like, oh, I want to sound like them, right? It's that danger of the writer thing. It's like, oh, well, I like this writer, so you read 6 books and you accidentally start to sound like them. Or
it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, of course.
Early on, before I started stand up, so I ended up getting, and I think I came across Bill Hicks listening to Tool. I was one of those people, and so I found him that way because he wasn't on TV. But even before, when I was really little, when I was a little kid, I found my dad had a Richard Pryor tape. That had like all the hits on it. And I remember listening to that, and it was clearly like something that I wasn't supposed to listen to, because I'm talking like 6 or 7 when I found it, No,
sure, yeah.
But who else?
I was thinking Comedy 7, 8. I mean, for me, 7 or 8, like I became aware of the comedy album, and that it was Pryor, and we weren't like a comedy family or whatever. And again, like Latino comics weren't on TV really at that point and stuff. Right. But I thought it was interesting that Pryor had permeated like my household, right? which is a Mexican American household, you know.
Right.
And I was
I
like,
think
oh,
that's why he is so pervasive. He's because yeah, like
so interesting that he was like one of three comics. I mean, and the other, you know, two American ones and one Mexican one that was in the consciousness of the household, you know. Yeah, you listen to his stuff,
no,
and it could have been written yesterday. Some of it, you know.
right. But then also, I had my parents' records that I listened to. Starting around that age, I want to say too. They had like my mom had some Cheech and Chong records, which were that's not stand up per se, but like it's just
No, they're comedy
still the
album.
sense of like yeah, it's a comedy album. Anyway, so I'm jumping around. I apologize. This is my brain works,
Oh, well,
but
you're on the right podcast for that, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah, I'm just going back and forth. But thinking back into college, like Comedy Central was big back then. In terms of they really leaned into stand up. Premium Blend was a show that I remember would watch on like something that was easy to put on the TV. Like I lived in a party house more or less. I don't know why. I had three fucking jobs in college, but I also lived in the house that everybody came over to. But yeah, like Premium Blend would come on. I remember seeing the first episode of the Chappelle Show. And that first the black white supremacist, like that just blew me away. I have a specific memory of seeing that and being like, holy shit, this is weird and this is different than anything I've seen
And
before.
special, right? And that is like,
Yeah.
oh no, this is something special. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and that's what I thought. Like, I don't know if because again, it's like I thought I was like, oh, this is funny and stuff, but like, I don't think I knew what I was watching at the time, but I did have some kind of sense that like this is again so unique, so different that this is something special. And then there we go in the next couple of years and figure out what it all became. Yeah,
Right. And then somebody else that I'm just not so that was also the era of Mitch Hedberg. He was huge then. I remember watching that special on Comedy Central, and then I actually saw him I saw him the month he died because he was in Houston and he went after that gig. He went missing for like a week he was on a bender, and he was I don't remember, he was at some huge stadium. It might have been like where the Rockets used to play, like that big. That's how
yeah,
big he
sure,
was in. But he was he was so whacked out. He was so gone
yeah, poor guy.
because he clearly done a rod before he walked out the door, before he
Yeah,
walked on stage. But
yeah,
no, I remember like he was that was another like pervasive. That was like a contemporary person that
sure.
I had discovered and gotten into.
And so you say, it took you a bit to come up with that first set, that first 3 minutes ish. And so, what is that like, or what was that like then? And maybe now that have several more gigs under your belt, how does that writing process evolve, and where are you at now, what does that even mean?
Oh yeah, no, it was super embarrassing. I wish I would have gotten the notebook. I could have like pulled up some.
Oh, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, I went and watched a few, but like I felt I was a little overly confident in how funny I thought my jokes were, and they really were the basic, just not even one-liners really. They were just so weird and disconnected, and didn't really have anything to do with each other. But they weren't as good as Mitch Hedberg by any, like, you know what I mean? So the turns of phrase weren't there. I remember one of the first ones that I did, because I used to do a bit about it being, I used to have this whole like story about it. And it started with this was one of the first jokes I wrote. It goes, do you think women who drive sports cars are overcompensating for their really huge vaginas? I'm like, that's it. That's the joke. It's not like, it's really stupid.
Just inverting this thing
yeah,
that we're aware of, right? The guys with
right,
big trucks and little dicks
right.
or whatever. Yeah.
So like a lot of just like it kind of worked in poetry. It was like weird poetic lines or so, but not really even necessarily a joke. So yeah, that first set was pretty terrible. I remember the person that went on before me. He's really funny. Actually, he used to play. This guy named Blake Midget. He's used to play in this punk band. He's the lead for Page 99. I went on before him, and he had shit to bet. Like he's legitimately was funny then and is still funny. and he shit the bed. There was like a drunk woman like sitting right by the stage. This is how bad the management was when I started. There was a drunk woman just heckling everyone, and had no, like, she was still there. They didn't kick her out because this was like nearly 1 a.m, and she's just like, I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of did my jokes and hoped that she would go away, which is not how I would interact with her now. But
And so that's actually one of the things I was going to ask, because about hecklers specifically.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, when you wrote your first stuff, you're like, well, I thought it was funnier than maybe the audience did. And that's one of the things that differs from that type of writing, stand-up comedy writing, and coming up with those jokes and stories and so on, is that you don't know until there's an audience in front of you.
Right.
And so you have to get the response live. And then again, there is something at stake because I'm standing on a stage with a light on me. And so what about the heckler thing and figuring out, like, not just, hey, that joke didn't work, but now that person's attacking me for it or whatever?
Yeah, no, I mean, dealing with hecklers, that's advanced. Like, I still don't, I'm better than the average person who doesn't do public speaking all the time is at dealing with them, but I still, like, feel like I could be better at it. Not that I want to get a whole lot of practice at it.
No, sure, but that's
there's just that's the thing. That's the thing that I feel like I'm pretty qualified to speak to in different, because when you're writing, right, you're like, you write poems or you're writing short stories. There's just so much of that time that you're in your own vacuum. You are focused on the thing itself and not how people are responding to it. You're doing that same thing when you're writing jokes. You may spend a lot of time like tweaking language and structure of the joke before you even take it up to stage. But then you have that next thing, which is the immediate feedback that you're seeking out when you're writing jokes, when you're doing jokes at an open mic and trying to figure out if something is funny or where something is funny. Because you're not always, like, the joke isn't always where you expect it to be when you first get up on stage. That's something that you ended up discovering, hopefully. And sometimes it happens years later.
Sure.
Here's where the joke is. But
yeah, and so
we're really good at meandering. So if you need to ask the question.
No, and so if you write it with this kind of okay, well, this is the kind of goal, this is the kind of path I want to take in this joke. Versus a piece of writing, an article, a newspaper piece, or whatever, any kind of writing outside of needing that audience. Well, the editor will tell you, oh, well, change this and that and whatever, and get back to me. You go back and forth, a couple emails, and life goes on. So you're sitting there and trying out the joke, right? And it's the maybe second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th pass, but I'm going to try it out, and you got a room of a dozen or 100 editors with the feedback, and the feedback is, yeah. Or whatever, and I just want to press that stupid button again. I don't get to press it often, but and so the heckler thing, having to get that immediate feedback, way different story in that type of writing.
Right, that's a different pursuit, though. Like that's a different, like, that's outside of writing jokes and making jokes work. But it's a part of it. I don't know how, right? Like, it's a thing it's probably going to happen because it's a live audience, and so it's something that has to be dealt with, whether or not how you choose to engage with the person it really takes a lot of nuance.
Yeah, even if it's like, don't miss a beat, just hit your next joke and make sure you get whatever you need to say the way you need to say it so it lands even better, and you shut them down by being better and just doing your shit. Or you go straight for them, or anything in between, right? It's just one of those things it's a fascinating thing to see, at any level, where it's like, oh, I'm at a huge show versus a small spot where people are being obnoxious.
So to bring it back around to where I had hoped I would get to, because you were talking about comparing first set to how I view it now. I haven't done stand-up in person in almost a year now. March something, the middle of March is the last time that I actually did a set. But working on jokes, I sort of thrive for the danger that, like, a heckler would be. And when I say danger, I don't really mean it's dangerous and I feel like I'm at risk, but it's like,
Sure.
for most people, like they don't know how to handle that and they don't have any experience with it. I am seeking out, like, I don't necessarily know exactly how a joke is going to go, and I feel like that is helping me. Oh shit, I don't know how this is going to go. I need to talk until I find this place, and I may take a turn that I'm not expecting. So there is a lot more of me especially if I'm trying to find the laugh lines in a joke, or find it, or figure out if something's funny. I've been doing it for so long now that I just go up with the concept sometimes and just kind of talk it out and hope that I stumble upon it.
Sure.
If I don't, then that's one time that I failed, and that's it. It's not the end of the world.
No, yeah, I guess that's an interesting, again, being on stage at a certain amount of time, you can put some of that writing process on the stage, right? The invention part of the thing. Oh, I have this premise, I have these couple kind of things, but I'm going to talk it out, figure out where it goes, and
Right.
and it tells you maybe what works and what doesn't.
But then also, even I might have a short, one liner, and then it comes to me like a tag, another, stacking on top of that joke, a tag will come to me, and then I'll say it right away, and then it'll be there. And that's, whereas if I had sat down with a notebook and said, okay, and now I have to come up with the tag for this joke, it wouldn't have happened that way.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe taking it like a step back before, like, the heckler response, right? The best response you can get is great, yeah, laugh, clap.
Right.
Worst response is somebody yells at you and curses at you and throws a drink or something. But
Yeah.
but what about the like fucking crickets? What about? Oh, just kidding. Wrong fucking button, asshole.
Yeah.
Like, what if like the no response? What about the kind of silent, like, oh no, I just kind of bombed.
No, that's actually worse than the heckler. I don't know. At least, at least with the heckler, you're evoking some sort of emotion from that person, right? It's not the emotion, and it's not the emotion or response that I want, but it is one. Whereas if it's just a room full of people just sitting there and staring at you, I find that to be a lot more daunting. And then what you end up figuring out how to do is how to take that pressure and make it a joke out of that. Commenting on you not doing well it always works.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that's just like a trick of the trade that you end up figuring out.
Because everybody knows, like, because we heard because again, the heckler
Right.
fills the silence where it's like, and so it's,
Right.
even if the joke didn't land, it's still, something is filling my ears with sound.
Right.
And so the silence is, yeah.
Or even if I know the joke usually works and it doesn't that time, that might be something I'll speak to, and I'll like shit on the people that are there. Like, that's on you guys, not me. Or, there's just so many different ways to address it. Whereas that's not really part of the writing process, right? The joke isn't, well, okay, let me back up. People not laughing at the joke, you have to hone and figure out whether or not is that always happening? You try the same joke 5 times and you get the same response, which is no response. Okay, then something needs to happen. Whereas that the joke works most of the time, and then what are the circumstances that led you here to say those same words in the same cadence, in the same order, and then people don't laugh?
Sure.
What do you do with that situation? So it is and it isn't helpful for writing, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. A little bit.
It's a different mode too, because like, yeah, I think what I was trying to get to was working through jokes and figuring them out, and then also getting a laugh aren't the same thing.
Yeah, I get
Right?
you.
Like, I want to write really great jokes. I could just do a bunch of hack things that I know people are going to laugh at. Those are different modes. Commenting on your joke is kind of hack, but if you want to keep the energy moving for
Yeah,
your
there's a
own
space for it, yeah, to get you to the next few seconds. Yeah.
right for your own benefit, but then also for the benefit of the show as a whole. You don't want to bury anybody if you can't help it.
So, what about doing really well? Because here's the like I've seen you perform a handful of times, right? Like we've been friends for a good while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen you eat balls, and I've seen you
Yeah.
kill, man.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
those are the same jokes, right?
Right,
But like,
right.
And so that's been really cool and interesting to see. Very for very similar sets just being received differently. But what about those? Again, those really good nights where you're just kind of on fire, or the crowd's just kind of hot, or whatever version of everything going kind of well and hitting all your marks. Yeah, speak to that, because again, that's yeah. Well, just tell me. Yeah,
That's the stuff. That's the stuff that you like. That's what keeps you going back to it. Is like it's in that moment. It feels. I don't even know how to explain it. It just feels like you have these people in your hand. Now it sounds like I'm a dictator, but which it really is kind of a like in a certain sense, like it's a very small like dictatorship, right? Like,
well, yeah, it's like it's like you got to own that room. You got to manipulate the crowd. It's part of the thing. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, you are absolutely the cult of personality for that moment in time, and that feels pretty good. Like I get why Trump travels around and does all of that stuff, puts on all those rallies. That feeds his ego for sure.
Yeah.
So the thing with him is he's not a normal human being. So when he doesn't get that, it tanks him. He doesn't have the presence of mind to be able to continue about his day. I don't know how I started talking about Trump there, but anyway.
Yeah, how dare you?
No, but that's the stuff, man. That's where when you really start to especially the first few times you really start to get laughs, you're like, oh fuck, yeah, I'm doing this. I really know what I'm doing here.
And so yeah, those first few times you're like, oh, I'm kind of getting on a roll. Like I'm getting some laughs and this is landing. And so what are maybe a memory or two from doing stand-up comedy that stand out, or you're like, man, that was good, and that's kind of one of those things I hit, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it, or
so in Austin, the main club, Cap City Comedy Club, RIP, they didn't make it through COVID.
Yeah, that's a fucking shame, man.
Yeah, they had. Every year they had a funniest person in Austin contest, and essentially it was anybody that had the $15 to sign up, you could sign up, and so it was a big deal with the people that did comedy pretty consistently. People that are in the scene, and you would go, but you wouldn't go. I mean, you'd go to support your friends, right? But what you really went to see were the people who like the funny guy at the office who decided he was going to do his shtick that he does in the office on stage and has never performed.
Yeah. Skip the open mic for a couple weekends in a row and only pay $20 and jump in the line.
Right. Or the person who's completely delusional and thinks that they're the next Cat Williams. And, no, you go to see those, you go to see the train wrecks. At least for me, because I have no joy watching comedy anymore. I'm just standing in so many rooms waiting to go up. You just don't. It's a rarity when you actually enjoy it. But that might be too behind the curtain. But anyway, so they have the contest, and the first year I did it, I'd barely been doing it a couple of months, and. It was terrible. And I went on first and I just really ate it. But the person that hosted that show that night was Martha Kelly, who was on Zach Galifianakis' show Baskets. Okay. She was not the main, well, he was the main character, but she was one of the main characters on the show. She's really supportive. She's like, "Hey, your jokes are really funny. You write solid jokes. Don't give up. Just keep going and keep doing it." And like, yeah, that was really nice to have somebody that she wasn't that famous. She's not super famous, but she's like a successful person in comedy. And she had just moved back to Austin at that point in time. She had been in Los Angeles. And so it was nice to have somebody be like, okay, this person is in the industry. And I didn't ask her anything. I didn't seek out anything that, like, I didn't ask her for advice or anything. She just came to me and say, hey, you're doing the right,
Yeah,
the way you're
unsolicited.
doing it
Yeah,
is okay.
sure.
Yeah. Unsolicited. Sure. Um, the next year, I went on, and I was the first person on the lineup to kill. Like, I basically brought the energy up in the house,
Hell yeah.
and so there's 3 rounds, and I made it through. Yeah, I made it through that first round, and that was a really nice, kind of long arc of putting in the work, I guess.
Hell yeah. No, yeah, yeah. That's great that you saw some success there, and again that even that first round and getting some, I mean that first time around getting some feedback again unsolicited is
Yeah,
yeah, that's great. And then getting that feedback in the future from the crowd
right.
and getting pushed through the contest, like
Yeah,
that's great. That's badass. So I know again because I know you personally that you have an interesting background. Not that just you're a comedian, you have a poetry degree, but even before that, you you worked in a prison,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so like that's an interesting, couple jumps you make there.
right,
Uh, and I imagine that's a pretty dark kind of gig to have. And then you
right.
end up, following this pursuit of, hey, let me make fucking people laugh till Dr. Pepper comes out their nose, right? Like, how do I?
Right, right.
And so that's yeah. So what about the prison thing? And then I know you have like maybe I know you have I know I've heard one joke that has to do with your background in that, but not even just the actual happenings of it, but just that this is kind of dark and way. I can't think of much more things that are opposite than comedy,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, yeah, I worked. So I went into the army right out of high school, and I got sectioned out. Uh, I got sectioned out on 9/11. That
Oh,
one, that one, that
oh, really?
9/11.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
Jesus,
um,
dude.
so I came home and didn't. Well, I didn't want to. Basically, so I grew up in Huntsville, Texas. This is where, it's kind of the center of the universe in Texas for the prison system. And my dad worked there for, by the time he retired, he put in like 40 years. And I grew up around it. Um, like, it was very much a part of my life, even as a kid, so I would get haircuts there in the barber shop on the unit.
Holy
That was
shit.
probably one of the first places I got a haircut. Like, they had a pool that was maintained by inmates. And so there'd be like inmates like cleaning the pool while you're like,
What
diving
is
off the diving board and stuff.
what
Yeah.
is happening? Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't heard this shit
Um,
from you. This is great.
so that's like, it's above and beyond. I worked at a prison. Like, prison was like
Sure.
part of my upbringing, and I lived 2 minutes from one of the biggest prison farms in Texas, where my dad worked, and so that was all there was. It was kind of like a factory town. That's all there is to do there, unless you want to flip burgers, right? And I wanted to not live at home, and the best way for me to do that, while I figured out what I was going to do, was to work there at the prison. And so I did that, and yeah, it's not a fun place at all.
Yeah.
But you've got people that are gonna either have been in and out since they were old enough, since they were teenagers, or people that know that they're never going to get out. And when I first started, I really had I didn't have a solid, like, time. Like, I'm going to work here for 2 years and save up enough money. I didn't have a plan like that. I was just trying to get by. So in a sense, like, I didn't know how long this was going to go. But what I think it helped me do is figure out that, okay, I probably have one of the shittier jobs that you can have. I can either kind of be, you know, feel downtrodden about that for however long this is going to be, or I could not take things too seriously. And I think I even that's probably one of the positive things I saw from working around inmates is if you're in prison, like you have to like that. That's got to be your mindset. You can't take things too seriously if you want to get by.
Because the desperation will get you. The desperation is going to kill you.
Shit, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of that, like gallows humor, for sure, is necessary.
No, that's interesting that you say that reflection on the inmates. Because otherwise, if you're just like plenty of reasons to be fucked up, depressed, and desperate in prison, so they figure out ways to flip that and get by because that's all it is, right?
Fuck. Also, just like the grossest street jokes you're ever going to hear.
Yeah. They don't. Yeah, I can only imagine. Jesus.
What'd the lesbian vampire say to the other lesbian vampire? See you next month. Yeah, there you go. That's what I remember. And then a lot of Michael Jackson jokes. So.
Jesus. and so the kind of, even though you haven't been able to be on stage and stuff like that lately, but that's the writing that you do and are doing as far as your kind of creative passion, the comedy stuff. But do you do like any other kind of writing? Because like you have a poetry background, obviously, because of your degree, but like fiction or even songwriting. I know you play a little.
Yeah, I played guitar since I was like 14. I never really got good at writing songs. But I played in bands and stuff. I started. Who knows if I'm going to finish? I started writing 2 different novels. So one of them is pretty insane, and I sort of gave up on that one because it was just so weird. I didn't even envision like what would how would this even be. To be honest, like I was trying to think of something that I produced that could be made into like a movie, maybe, perhaps.
Oh, sure.
So that one was just like, there's no way this is the first. It's so crazy. It's about like a failed chiropractor that like ends up being on a ship that's on a lake, and so like it's just so fucking weird. So I started.
That's more interesting than lots of the shit I've read lately. Right. So I'm all about hey, I maybe like, hey, baby, put the novel down. Maybe pick up some screenwriting software and maybe it is a movie, and
right. So that's one thing that I have tucked away that I would definitely like to see something made out of, and then I basically. The thing that I was taking more seriously the last couple of years is a novel about more or less. It probably would have been a memoir, but I figure it's easier to make a novel out of something where you can have creative license with characters and stuff. Whereas a memoir, I didn't want to have to.
I agree.
I'm lazy. I don't want to do the research.
No, don't. Yeah. No, yeah. I agree.
About prison. Yeah.
Sure. Right. And so, because you have that interesting lens into that world. But then, doing a novel gives you those liberties to be like the what ifs. I'm always like, well, the fiction version of that thing that was interesting is the what ifs. Well, what if this happened instead of that, right? And take that turn, and then you get to be. It becomes a completely different experience. So that's dope. Right. Yeah, a couple novels. Yeah,
which like is also similar to writing jokes that are founded in truth. They're not always. If you tell people exactly the truthful thing that happened, it's not funny.
Right, I agree. Yeah, and so being able to explore that with a premise or a tone or a character that you're familiar with, a scenery that you're familiar with, a setting, and explore that. I think that's how you find the authenticity in reading a novel or reading a short story about prison. Right.
Yeah.
And so, since this is the Writers and Fighters podcast, clearly you're a writer, but I always invert that question and ask, do you have any fight experience? Right? I interview people in combat sports and stuff, but like, do you have any training in your background or any fights? I kind of know that I've seen on the social medias that there's a picture of little Jared, Jared in his taekwondo gi.
Sixth grade, yeah. Shotokan.
Oh, Shotokan. I'm sorry.
Karate, yeah.
Karate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Disrespectful of me. Karate. Okay. Shotokan karate. Cool.
Yeah. So my dad. I was talking about my dad. He taught. So a good portion of his career in the prison, he worked in the training department, and so he actually headed it up before he retired. So a part of that was he taught people how to shoot guns. And you taught people how to, I wouldn't say fight. You teach people how to not die.
Sure.
So I grew up, he would teach us a lot of defensive tactics stuff. Me and my brother's
self-defense.
5 years younger than me. Yeah. But so that's kind of literally going for the jugular kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like it's like you have to save your own life. This is what you do.
So a lot of putting your, thumbs on the eyeballs and all the pressure points and on your face and stuff. But then, I took karate from the time I was 10 until I was 14. I was studying for my brown belt before I realized that hey, this isn't the best thing to be doing when you're a teen going through puberty.
Oh no, because once all the guys get big, it's a nightmare. Yeah.
Right. But then also it's just chicks don't really the Karate Kid's not real.
I'm not Ralph Macchio.
You're not getting chicks doing.
Nobody got laid because they.
That's about the time
had a
I
brown
picked up
belt in karate at 15.
That's about the time I picked up the guitar, actually. So
right, and that makes 100% sense at that age. It's like, oh no, the guy with the guitar is super cool, man.
Right. I managed to be enough of a jerk or funny person in high school that I didn't really get into any fights.
Well, that's good. I'm happy to hear that.
But there's a big but.
Can't lie.
When I worked,
get it? All right. You're the comedian.
I worked when I was in the prison. I worked in administrative segregation, which is the lockup raw. You put on riot gear, and the people that are only in for, they're in their cell by themselves 23 hours a day. That's where I was working, and I was also on the extraction team, which meant that when we needed to extract an offender, I was the first person that went in with the leg irons. So there were four people that were much larger than me behind me going in when we'd open the cell door, pushing me in, and my job was to get the leg irons on the guy.
Fuck me.
So
unpleasant.
If those are fights, I've got a lot of those.
I will count it 100%. Fuck me, man. Ugh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was probably a lot of the contact stuff. I witnessed a lot of my first week. I witnessed a stabbing in the shower.
Fuck.
Yeah, it was I didn't fight the guy.
Oh, sure, but that's you're immediately introduced to the violence that happens here.
Right, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. And then in my adult life, I know better, and I'm also I'm getting older. I know what I'm capable of, and I don't like to get into those situations. Obviously, I have children and don't want to go to jail, so.
You don't want some dude getting pushed in there and putting the leg shackles on you.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, man. And so where can people find you online? Hopefully, be able to get back on stage in the coming year and all that stuff, or, follow you, and you put funny stuff on the Twitter sometimes.
I should update my website. I don't know what, I have Twitter. I haven't really Twitter's become a weird place. I'm on Instagram. You search my name on Instagram, it's on there. The place I'm really kind of living it up right now is TikTok. I know that people don't get it, but it's a wonderful place. I'm on TikTok.
And so you're my TikTok curator. I don't have TikTok, but I know TikTok thanks to you, because like it's replaced you sending me a meme or a GIF. You send me a TikTok link and I watch it and I'm like, oh, there's 10 seconds of some bizarre thing happening. And I just think it's hilarious that you're into TikTok.
Right. And that's the misconception about it, is like it's for children and it's just like people like lip syncing or dancing. Is like, okay, yeah, that's the main lane, but here are these other side streets that you can also go down. And like I actually work out. That's my outlet to work out bits, and I didn't really like get to touch on that too much. But like I kind of do the same thing with some of my videos. Is I'll have a something I want to talk about, and I'm not necessarily needing it to be funny, but it's happened enough times that I've figured out, hey, let me just come up with a concept that's a premise to a joke, and then I'm just going to talk it through, and then I'll write a joke like that, and it'll do pretty well.
No, there's been a few things that you put on TikTok that got a pretty good little buzz here and there. And I was like, yeah, you made that. That's really quick and really good. And this many people are right. I was like, oh, there's people responding and sharing it and liking it or whatever. And
exactly.
No, yeah, I think it's a real outlet. It's like, I think it's smart to evolve with that and use that as a tool, right? Especially right now. And it's a good, really quick, digestible form of comedy, just like the meme was,
Yeah,
that,
no, I think why there's a real good reason it blew up during COVID, just because the nature of how you can produce videos, and then how you're consuming them. No videos longer than a minute. So yeah.
No, that's great. So we'll give people links to your TikTok and all the other social media stuff so they can keep in touch digitally until we can sit in a little room with you on the stage and laughing.
So we can touch digitally.
Yeah, so we can.
Gross.
So we can, get back in person and take off our masks and spit in each other's mouths and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Put our digits in each other's mouths.
I'm never going to say digitally. I'm going to replace that with electronically forever now. And so, all right. Thanks a lot, Jared. Love you, man.
Yeah, man. All right, good.
Peace. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to that interview with Jared Walls. If you want to follow him online, go over to Instagram. On Instagram, you can find him at def_Foxworthy. That's at DEF_Foxworthy. On TikTok, you can follow Jared at JaredWallsY. On TikTok, it's at JaredWallsY. Both those will be in the show notes. You can click those and follow him. I want to thank everybody for supporting the podcast in whatever way you can. Every week that goes by, we get more subscribers, more listeners, more ratings. If you want to follow us, do a search on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or you can visit ridersandfighters.com. Follow all the social links there straight ahead. I know things are rough out there, y'all, but be good, be safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next week.